You cannot build something that's tested on men, that's built for men, that solves a problem for men, and then say, look, we gave it to the women and they're not taking it. When I started earning online, something changed.
Men were interested to know how you were making 50,000.
Yes, they would call me and say, tell us what you're doing.
Working from home and getting to earn money, that of course must be like really liberating, but at the same time for them that also somehow increases the burden.
It's in no way easy because when you're home and you're working, nobody understands that you're actually working. We saw that in COVID.
Microfinances, they must be really helpful as well.
A lot of them are charging sinfully high profit rates.
Tell us what comes to your mind when you read them.
The staggering number of women engaged in unpaid care and domestic work in Pakistan. So year 2030.
Daily Laws के नाम से एक किताब है. I think he also had, he's author of 48 Laws of Power as well. So Daily Laws में it's just one page, one thought, one idea, and like that's it, right? So not too demanding. So generally what I do is like when I'm starting my day, I just read that. And then after that, I try to take notes, whatever I've read, how it applies in my life and what's the takeaway for me.
Yeah.
So I think you're right, it is very important to, just slow down a bit, or khas up the content that we consume, it just is getting us addicted to quick things, foreign, yeah.
In depth नहीं जाते ना, बस ऊपरी उसी के ऊपर डिस्कशन होती है. अगर किसी से डिस्कशन करने बैठे 5 मिनट से ज़्यादा नहीं कर सकते. You'll both then jump to another topic because you don't have enough information.
I think maybe the generation that we have sort of like evolved in that long form content to now
devolving into short form. Bilkul.
But I think like the kids these days, especially Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they haven't seen that. They haven't experienced it. So I think it is going to affect them a lot. I see some of the signs when I see my nieces and my nephews. So what are your opinions on that?
My opinion is the same as we were just, talking about how, like, I see it with my kids and I feel it's unfortunate. They don't understand what it means to really immerse yourself in an experience, whether it's reading or it's something active like sports or everything. We could sit and play Ludo for hours. We would play carom board. We would do solitaire. I remember being very young and learning it from my father and playing it. Now, how my father learned it, I'm not going to go into those details. I don't know. But kids these days, they get bored so easily. So if there is something to do, it has to be a video game. Things changing quickly. Bright colors, fast movements, fast changing scenes and actions and storylines. They don't really, get time to get bored and get creative and find out what they like doing when they are by themselves. They don't know how to enjoy their own company. I can sit with myself for hours and talk to myself for hours and, just start doing things, random stuff that I've picked up over the years and entertain myself. I can go alone to the mountains. I do that. I do solo travel. So I'll go to Hunza and just, turn off my phone for a whole week while I'm there and not miss it at all. But kids these days, they don't know. We used to get creative. Like I remember playing with clay. We used to have a privileged life and we had house staff living in our home, like in the servant quarters. And those kids, I would play entire afternoons with them, just making, stuff out of clay, writing on a takhti and board. That was so fascinating to us. But nowadays, that depth of understanding is missing. Like, first of all, understanding yourself. Who am I? What do I like? What entertains me? What irks me? What makes me happy? I think that knowledge is really missing. And then also having that in-depth knowledge about things. Like, back then, if you asked me about Gone with the Wind, for example, the book, I could really tell you what that book was about. Or you asked me about a movie, I was only concentrating on the movie. I didn't have a device in my hands that I was playing on at the same time as I was consuming what was on the television. So, I really feel that's missing.
Yeah. And I think like sometimes it is luxurious to get bored as well.
Yeah.
Aajkal ke time mein, because I think like once you're sitting on your own, you're bored, that is also the time when the creativity sort of like kicks in.
Yeah, I think I think it's so important to get bored. It's so important because that's when you really, as I said, really discover yourself and what you like to do. And unfortunately, kids these days don't have that idea. They get bored and they think it's a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing to be bored because now you're going to do something that's creative. Like when I got laid off from work and I was sitting at home and I didn't have much to do, I started learning how to work online. And I could do it because I didn't have 10 other things distracting me. This is, I think, pre-Facebook time.
Yeah.
Or was there Facebook? I don't remember. But there was definitely a lot of platforms that weren't there to distract me, or Instagram or all of that. So I could really immerse myself and learn a new skill. Nowadays, kids, how do they learn? So my child doing her O-levels did not sit and read from a book. She would play a YouTube channel where some teacher is talking nonstop for hours and learning from that, like, how do you concentrate on a book, on a static piece of paper? And, so that's missing. And I think it's sad.
Yeah, everything has to be dynamic and there needs to be,
Yeah.
something to keep the audience alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So gamification for everything.
Yeah.
You want everything gamified so people would be interested in it. But everything can't be taught through games. Some parts of it, yes. Other things, you have to use your own cognitive abilities and your own mind and your own, thoughts and your own smartness and intelligence to figure them out. Not everything is going to present itself on a plate to you.
It's interesting that you mentioned about this particular initiative that you started and how it was born out of boredom.
Yeah.
If it's the right way to put it.
Yeah.
I know your story is out there. People can watch that. But just to go deeper into that particular phase, what exactly do you think, what sort of like became the primary reason to get to that point that you felt there was this need to start something? And that realization to see the broader picture and broader purpose behind it.
Look, so with the firstborn, everyone knows the story. I had postpartum depression, and it wasn't regular postpartum. I had a nervous breakdown where I had to receive ECTs or electroconvulsive therapy. I lost 2 years of my memory. And when I was recovering from it, I realized I needed to do something, because I was going to go nuts again. And that's what the doctors were also saying. She needs to stay busy. So I started teaching. Fine. Class 6th grade English teacher, kept me busy enough. But then came a time when that wasn't an option anymore either, being a woman in Pakistan. I was expecting, and they said, we got to let you go until, you can come back and bring the child to the daycare center or to the pre-nursery or whatever. And that's where it hit me. The problems women face is not just the fact that they are not allowed to work outside, there are not enough respectable jobs for you, there is commuting, all of those, issues that we already know about, but also the lack of opportunities, the small things that can, take you out of the job market, like growing your family. In Pakistan, you're in your 20s, early 30s, that's when you're growing your family, right? And those are like the formative years of your career. You miss out on that, you come back in your late 30s, 40s, someone has already replaced you. And it's usually a man, because he can continue with his career, not take a break because he has had a kid. So that made me think, okay, I can't sit home. I have to keep working. Otherwise, I'm going to have a relapse with the second one. What can I do? And that boredom led me to the desktop computer, Pentium 1 or 2, whatever. And started searching, and I opened like 100 tabs. There was no ChatGPT to tell me what to do, right? I had to research it on my own. And that's where I figured out, okay, people are working online. It's probably a scam, but let's try it. And I tried it, and it actually worked. And just from that, it was an idea like, there's so many women like me who need to be doing this, who need to know about this. And so it really came out of a place of empathy for others who have been through the same, or so many women around me who were so smart and intelligent and all of that, but could not join the workforce, that this is not a secret I'm gatekeeping. I need to go out and tell everyone about it. And it just happened after that.
That's interesting. And very especially like when you find something to do, I mean, to also not just to keep yourself busy, but like the greater purpose behind it, and to connecting the dots and seeing how it is somehow, it impacts the whole society, the lack of opportunities, and seeing the possibilities of that not everyone is aware of, and trying to get to sort of like disseminate that message to all those who can benefit out of it,
Yeah,
and their lives changes.
absolutely. Yes.
Must be like really immensely rewarding once you started seeing that play out in a way that you may not have even expected.
Yeah, the kind of stories that emerged. I remember this young woman who was an army wife living somewhere, interior Punjab or whatever, her coming to work with Women's Digital League. This woman who was from a minority religion, her not getting work elsewhere because there was a lot of bias, since it was a sect within Islam that was, people had their thoughts about. So her finding work, and to the extent that based on the work experience, she then got a job abroad and left Pakistan and was able to move. And so many teachers who just left work because they were growing families now coming back and working on these. Young girls who were, funding their own O-levels or A-level studies, continuing those studies. It was incredible. In Peshawar, I saw this one young girl who who had done her BBA, and she wanted to do her master's, but her mother passed away, and she had 4 younger siblings. So the father asked her to stay home and look after them. But then she came and did one of our trainings, and she told me later, she said, I earn enough to now fund my own education and not be a burden, for my father, or, still be able to take care of the siblings while I'm doing it privately. So it was immensely rewarding without me even realizing it when I started it, that this is how it would evolve.
How do you see, this particular story that you mentioned about, there is that somehow unpaid labor involved, where this person had to like forego all her ambitions and stay for the greater good.
Yeah.
But when I think about the alternates to these kind of situations and connecting that to the fact of unpaid labor, उसका solution क्या आपके mind में आता है?
Unpaid labor का कोई solution नहीं है, unless the women stand up for themselves and say no more. But उसमें change आ रहा है, so some may see it as a good thing, a bad thing, whatever it is. But अभी recently Instagram पर पता नहीं सच है कि झूठ है, but Instagram said some story about how many hundreds of divorce cases were filed by women in Islamabad alone just this last year.
Yeah.
And well, it makes me sorry for the institution of marriage, but it makes me happy that people are choosing not to be in unhappy marriages where they are not valued. And there's a way out, and people are exercising that right? So unpaid labor, unless, men start realizing that they can't do it on their own, just like women have always been told they can't do it on their own, it will keep on happening. The men have to step up, and someone needs to educate them. I remember reading somewhere and then quoting it on another podcast and saying, who is going to prepare these men for these empowered women? So it's so important that the men are part of this whole feminism movement, or this whole movement for women economic empowerment, and all of that. So it's just like you can't keep the women out and hope to prosper, you can't also keep the men out and hope to prosper. So you all have to work together.
But like, again, we're talking about like unpaid labor, or usme there is no solution to that. But in an ideal world, what exactly one should aspire for, and what to educate men about? Is it more about for them to take responsibility, equal responsibility, so that all the burden of raising kids and taking care of the elders is not on women?
Yeah.
But that there is a shared responsibility, so that then women also have sufficient time to give it to themselves and feel more human.
No, absolutely. So again, the blame, then again, the duty falls on to the women to raise sons who understand that when they get up from the dining table, they have to pick up their plate and take it to the kitchen and wash it probably as well. Or if, the maid is off on her day off, then he's equally responsible for making breakfast as his sister probably is. So they take turns doing that, or realizing he got up from a place he needs to clean up. So these are small things. And I know that I don't know if it's a life that's way too cushy, but I remember my son in his teens coming to me after watching an Indian movie where this young girl was not allowed by her father to go and seek an education. He said, "Does that really happen? Can someone tell you that you can't go to school just because you're a girl?" He was surprised. It never occurred to him that could be the reality. And I would say that maybe it's wrong on my part for not having exposed him to that, but I didn't realize he wasn't even exposed to that possibility. So that's where it starts at home. So whether it's a mother, it's a spouse, it's generally people around you. Sometimes the grandmothers also play a huge role in spoiling the boys. Also, again, no, how can you do this? How can you ask him to go and get you water or make you breakfast, etc. But we need to normalize this.
Yeah.
So the more we normalize it and make it okay, the more acceptable it will be to society as a whole, and you will see less of this unpaid labor happening around us.
True. I remember reading as a child that Meena story jo UNICEF ki hai. And I remember for me also it was also something that I was not aware of, that Meena, being the sister, she stays home, cooks everything. And I forgot the name of the brother. He also gets to have larger share in the meal as well. He goes to school.
Yeah.
I think these sort of initiatives are good for raising awareness, but definitely there is a lot more that needs to be done in a country like ours.
Yeah, I think my father played a huge role in it because we're from South Waziristan, and despite how I present myself, that it's been a long journey. My parents are first generation who are out of Waziristan, so it was new. My father was the first one to get an education in his family. So for him, I remember I have two brothers. One is elder to me, and I remember me and him fighting over something. And then at some point, I stayed quiet. I stayed quiet so that peace could be restored and he wouldn't fight with me. And this is when we were little. And at one point, I said, "Listen, I'm answering back because you aren't stopping. I stopped at one, you went on for two more, so then I'm going to answer." And my father was sitting there listening to it, and he just turned to me and he said, "She's right."
Yeah.
And that was such a big thing. I didn't realize it at that time, but when today I think about it, it was such a big thing for him to say that and to put that into my brother's head, that she's right. If you continue doing it and she continues answering you, it's only fair. So it works both ways. These small things, what we consider small, actually matter in building character and building the person that you turn out to be as an adult.
And I think everything is interconnected as well. So parenting, teaching, all of that contributes to the understanding that kids end up having about the world and how things should be.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So this unequal treatment that women sometimes they get to have, especially I think in rural areas. So how that plays out later on in life, what's in your experience or the stories that you have seen, how it hinders them to achieve the potential that they have?
There's this idea that it's the rural women. Trust me, I've worked with women across all socioeconomic classes and across, rural, urban, peri-urban, semi-rural, whatever. And they're all in the same boat. You will see, when we first moved to Lahore, my idea of Lahore was, okay, all of these women are very, they're very independent, they are very strong, they have a lot of, independence in what they do. Just because the way they presented themselves, or they were driving cars, or they were sitting in a restaurant, coming from Peshawar mostly. And then when I started working with them, the problems that a woman in, say, a burqa somewhere in KP would tell me she was facing. A woman in Lahore wearing, Western clothes, going out to work, would tell me the same things. And they would be suffering from the same problems, the same kind of patriarchal, nonsense, for lack of a better word. So it was happening everywhere. So it's not just rural. I just came back from rural Sindh, a trip to rural Sindh, and you'd be amazed at how evolved they were. I don't want to say too much because it was just one visit and maybe I don't understand that culture as well, but I saw just how evolved they were in terms of men and women working together. I saw in so many areas how respectful those men were. For example, it was funny too, there was a lift and I was waiting outside and there were two gentlemen waiting there before me. And when the lift came, they asked me to go first. And I said, no, it's okay, you're our guest, you go first. We'll come later. There's enough space. No, it's all right. And then we went into these rural areas, Khairpur, Sakar, and places like that. And we saw the women working. There was a woman who was what is a Nazim? Some sort of a Nazim in that city, in one of the districts. And her father owned a donkey cart, and he used to, transport goods from one place to the other. And this young woman with just basic primary education was the Nazim of that district.
Right.
And you could see just how empowered they were, everyone that we met. So it's not only about rural areas. Urban areas are facing the same problem, and that's where the question arises, what are we doing wrong? Is it education? It can't be, because these are highly educated, qualified women. You read stories of Noor Muqaddam. You read stories of the lady Mariam, Ayaz Amir's daughter-in-law. You hear stories of the young Chitrali kid, the TikToker, and you find out all these women who are educated and going around and interacting in society, in a network that is just as literate. So is literacy the problem? I don't think so. There's something deeper and darker at play that I can't put my finger on, because it can't be just that. What that is, I can't say. I don't know what we need to change, but there's some ideas that are beyond, how you have been socially conditioned, because social conditioning works when you are in isolation and all you have is the people around you enforcing the kind of character you build, or the person that you become, the personality that you evolve into. But you have so much of external, impetus, like social media has opened up people's minds like anything. A kid in Tank sitting there and my daughter in Lahore are consuming the same content. They have the same level of understanding of things. But why does, this huge population turn out the way it does, so patriarchal, so dark? And honestly, I don't have the answer to that. It's just easier for men who have deep understanding, who are very smart, very intellectual. But it's just easier, it's more convenient to give all of the duties to the women and keep the status quo. Like, it works for them, right? So why would they want to change it? So they'll resist that change. And to resist that change, they'll give you examples from anywhere. And usually they use religion, they hide behind that. It's easier, especially if the next person is not very knowledgeable about it. So it's easier to hide behind that. Or then they'll just give you a confused dish of both religion and culture mixed together. So then you're like, but my religion says I can do this. But they'll say, no, but Pushtunwali says you can't do that. Or here in our area, it's not done this way. Our family does not act that way. So it just kind of works for them. Why would they want to change it?
I was going through one figure, and which mentions that only 18% of adult women have active bank accounts compared to 51% men. Then, the participation as well and all of that. So particularly access to finances. Do you think that is one of the solutions for women to be more independent, to have that sort of, more human life?
Yeah, it's like how after so many years it was declared by the UN that having access to information to the internet was a basic human right. So I feel that having access to a bank account is also a basic human right. It gives you basic dignity. You have your own money, you have your own, identity. But the issue here is how people don't understand what access is and how it brings you real empowerment. Access alone is not enough. So there are numbers. There are some very, interesting and optimistic numbers too. Like, for example, and I may get the numbers wrong, the dates wrong. So in 2016, I believe there were only 5% women with bank accounts or with access. And in 2025, that number had gone on over 50%. So over 50% women have bank accounts or access. What that does not address is how many of those accounts are unique. Like I have an account in Standard Chartered, Bank
Right.
Al-Falah,
So
and
there could be like
HBL.
multiple bank accounts. Yeah.
And then does it bring into play the digital banks like EasyPesa, digital wallets like EasyPesa, JazzCash, SadaPay, NayaPay? I have an account on 3. Is it counted as one or is it counted as multiple? Because how the bank usually gets their data, the state bank gets its data, is by just asking the banks to self-report. So every bank says, I have 100,000, I have 200,000, I have 150,000, and they just base it on that. But they don't look at unique numbers. So it's hard to say where the numbers are really. But the conversation needs to go beyond access because that alone means nothing. It's like, okay, I open a bank account. Is it dormant? Am I even using it? Am I using it only to keep my money and then take out that money that my husband gives me or my salary or whatever? Or am I using other products and services that are being offered by the banks to help me grow my business, or as a person, I may take a loan to, buy something in the house, maybe a U-fee to help me with the cleaning, with house cleaning, and take away some of that responsibility so I can concentrate on my career more, take on more consultancies. Is it helping me buy a fridge now instead of, so that I can make more samosas and keep them for clients, freeze them and all of that? Or am I just using the money that I get to put it in there and then take it out? So access alone is no longer, enough.
I mean, once a woman, for example, who has not been having her own money, and once she starts to earn, what do you think, like, how does it change the overall, the dynamics that she, at home?
So much changes.
Yeah.
So much. I love this question because I know from a personal experience now, coming from where I come from, being the first, generation where everyone was getting an education and we were living in urban areas, if you can call Banu and Dera Ismail Khan urban, but most of my life was Peshawar growing up. And, but I felt I was a very smart kid. I was very active. I always had an answer for everything, which is sometimes not something you want in a girl in our society, right? But I had all of the wrong attributes, right? And to be a troublemaker.
So all the definitions of a strong woman.
Of a strong woman or a corrupt woman. Yeah. So I felt largely unseen because, when it was dinner time or when there was an event and the families were together, the men would slowly go to one side and the women would slowly go to the other side because they had different conversations. They were talking about work, about politics, about, solving global problems, which they never did, but they'd love to talk about. And the women would talk about maid nahi aayi, kapda kahan se pyara hai.
Bachon ke
wale se, not a bad thing. These are human interest topics, but general those, because that's what they were exposed to, right? And it made me want to be there as well. Like, I have opinions, I have ideas, but not taken seriously at all. And I was a bit of like a goofball from the beginning. I was laughing and cracking jokes and being silly all the time. And then when I started earning and online, it wasn't a lot of money, but it was a lot of money by my standards because as a teacher, full-time teacher, I was making 8,000 rupees back in 2007, 6, something like that. And here freelancing, I was making 50,000 sitting at home. And something changed.
Yeah.
Now,
men were interested to know how you were making 50,000.
Yes, they would call me and say, tell us what you're doing. We heard you're doing something online. And then this was tech, right? I was working online on a computer. Internet was new. What are you doing, right? How does it work? Where does the money come from? Where do you find the work? And I thought to myself, I haven't changed a bit. I'm still the same old me. What has changed? And what changed was the fact that someone was willing to pay for what came out of here.
Yeah.
That's what changed. And that's what changes every time a woman goes out to make her own money, or a man too. Have you seen how biased people are towards a man who doesn't earn or doesn't earn enough? He goes through the same thing, nakara, bekar, bewakoof, all of those things, right? And the moment he starts making money, and suddenly the same person is, in a different league, perceived differently. So with the women, I saw the change, and it only comes, why do you have me here today? I'm not here because, you think I'm funny. I'm here because I'm doing something and you saw me somewhere and you thought I spoke well and people thought I was important, and so I'm here, right? So yeah, it changes everything. And then, you can argue about making money and the agency over that money, but just making it also changes people and their perceptions of you.
Yeah. And it's interesting, like, although by that point, you had completed your education, so probably you had formed some opinions, but still you felt that you were valued more into those conversations once you had, this proof of your competence as well.
Yeah, exactly. I have a master's degree in English literature from Frontier College for Women, Peshawar.
Yeah.
Right? That's a third-tier university even by Peshawar standards. Okay? Someone is going to kill me. I'll get bashed in the comments. I love Peshawar. I would happily go back, and I loved every moment of my life there. But it's the truth, right? So there's Peshawar University, there's Iron Sciences where Fussy went, our friend, and other places. But Frontier College was nowhere, right? And then I barely passed, although I came first in class. But I barely passed. Out of a class of 13, I was first. Only 3 passed, the rest failed. And but with that education, to come out and then work with the global clientele. I was literally working with, startups in the US, in Europe, who needed someone to make their content, to write stuff. And they're like, but why do they want you?
Yeah.
Like this girl that grew up with us, what does she know about anything? So it was just the shock of it. And the fact that so many other women through, online work, I'm sure men as well, found out that they were actually feeling, thinking, intelligent beings. Being human wasn't enough. Yeah, so they had to prove it by selling their skills and finding people who would pay for those skills.
And I think maybe the most interesting thing would be for them to see that you don't have to go anywhere. You save your travel costs,
Yeah.
you save your... And as a lot of people see that as, freedom, independence, that they don't have to go to office and if they work from home, because there was no concept of working from home back then.
Exactly. So it was just so alien, the whole idea.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? You're in your pajamas the entire day and you're just sitting there in front of a computer. But then there was also the suspicion. What are you doing on the laptop, on the computer the entire day? Especially at night, because most of the bids on Odesk, which is what I was working on, used to come out at US Eastern time, which means nighttime for us. And the faster you would bid, the more the chances you would get that someone would see your application and pay for it. So there was also the question, what are you doing online at night, all night? And this is a married woman with 2 kids, right? So there was that stigma also to deal with, or challenge to deal with. But yeah, working from home was great because it did not make anyone insecure in the sense that she's going outside with a driver, where's she going, who are the people she's working with, sitting at home the entire day. And those days we didn't have password protected phones. Anyone could see you were on a brick phone. So none of this. I wish we would go back to the days of the brick phone, and you can't, lock your phones anymore. I think it has led to more problems than otherwise. But yeah, it was a lot of freedom. It was a lot of fun. And then just learning new things. And because I was so excited, even if they were paying me $2 an hour, I would take the gig simply because I was enjoying it. And also because I was learning things like being a network administrator. What did I know about being a network administrator, right? So I would just go on YouTube and they would tell me, change this font, go back into WordPress, change this font to bold or whatever. Now go back and say, how do you change code in WordPress to bold? And I would learn from there. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
That's even pre-ChatGPT time where you actually had to go through a lot of videos.
Pre-ChatGPT. This is before a lot of things, before Twitter even, so we're old.
Yeah. So it must be a lot more difficult than what it is today.
It was a lot more difficult to find information, but then the work that they expected you to do was also pretty basic.
Right.
Right? The more that technology has evolved, the tasks have also become more complicated. So you need a lot more help now.
So when I was preparing for this conversation, I was thinking, and since I know that you have done a lot of work in, digital rights and making sure that women have that access to, this information that these platforms exist and finding their way out. So I was also thinking that for a lot of women, working from home and getting to earn money that of course must be like really liberating, but at the same time for them that also somehow increases the burden over them. I mean, pehle wo, if they were just taking care of the elders and the kids and
Yeah.
all of that, now they're doing the same thing, but at the top of it now they're working as well.
Yes.
So how do you see that?
Yeah, so I'll admit to it, I was very privileged in that way. I didn't have to do any housework. There was, house staff doing all of it. I had someone to help with my child, full-time help with them as well. So I could do it, but it's in no way easy, because when you're home and you're working, there'll be nobody understands that you're actually working. We saw that in COVID, where a lot of teachers are female, right? So when they were working from home, you would hear people in the background calling them, the maid coming in, the mother-in-law asking them, so, the mother's even, or, the family not understanding that she's actually working. So that happens, of course. And then there's the added, the housework is still sitting there. It's not going to get done by itself. You have to still get up and do it. So that's where the dual problem comes, na? So the modern woman is working, she's going out making careers, but she's coming back home to the same chores. There's that famous joke, right? When a woman comes in, she has to cook and clean and all of that. A man comes home to a cooked dinner and a woman comes home to, dirty dishes. So because it's believed that this is her choice and this is optional. For her to work is optional. It's no longer optional. You need homes with at least 2 salaries. One person is not enough to feed a family of 4 or 5. You need multiple salaries in the house or multiple people earning. But yeah, the roles, the duties are not shared the same way. The financial duties are, but the household duties are not.
So connecting all of this to the current work that you're doing, you're all aware the great stuff that you have done in the past. What do you think the kind of challenges that you saw have evolved probably in this ecosystem? So where exactly do we stand now?
As I like to say, we haven't made the kind of progress we need, but the needle has definitely moved. It is changing. Things are changing and getting better. I'm an eternal optimist, always. And I'm very optimistic that things are going to change. Our next generation, our kids are going to have it much more easier than we did. And if we are able to just do that, make sure that it's easier for them, that's a win. I'm not saying it's going to be magically, different, completely, altered, and there's going to be full equality and all of that. But it's going to be a lot better because, of the work that my previous generation did than the work that we did. So I think it's going to add up.
Yeah. And in the last 10 years, for example, I think you might have seen a lot of transformation as well. So these platforms like the digital wallets, for example, they're more easily available now. Yeah. The different programs that now you've been part of where you get to, reach out to a lot of women in the communities as well. Tell us a bit about that. How does it really help to sort of like address the problems that we are facing and the significance of overall efforts that are going on?
So 15 years ago, when I got into the business of, formal women economic development or empowerment, it was through Women's Digital League, of course, but more formally through my work with women entrepreneurs in a World Bank supported program called Women X, Women Raised to the Exponential Power of, X. And what I saw, like, where those women stood, the kind of challenges they were facing in 2015, I feel that things have changed professionally in 2025 because in the last 5 years alone, a lot of work is being done, or a lot of conversations at least are happening around not just inclusion, but intentionality. So saying you cannot build something that's tested on men, that's built for men, that solves a problem for men, and then say, look, we gave it to the women and they're not taking it, right? You're not going to take something and pink wash it and give it to the women and say, look, we're even giving 2% subsidy and the women just don't want it. It's because Pakistani women are not interested. That's not true. And this is world over, not just Pakistan. We're saying, no, you need to put the women at the center and then design, because it's believed and it's said that when you design for women, you design for everyone. Then you are being truly intentional in your design efforts. So we have gone a step further from human-centered design to women-centered design. That's what we're doing at the current company where I'm working. I'm not going to talk much about it because that's where I'm currently employed. But that's the important part. And DFS, or Digital Financial Services, have played a role in doing that. Because I remember in one of the organizations where I was working on a Gates Foundation grant, we took a financial services aggregator, like Easy Pesa, let's suppose, that you can pay utility bills with, you can buy tickets. It does a lot more than just transfer money, right? Yeah. And we took it to female retailers, women who were Kiryana store owners, women who ran marriage bureaus, women who ran one-person salons in like Chungia, Marsidu, those kind of areas. And we said, look, use this to supplement your income. We sat there, we taught them how to use it. And while they were making, say, 100, 200 rupees a day, now there was a supplemental income of, let's say, 5,000 a month, which meant a lot to them, because these were women who were dependent on microfinance. They were, taking credit from microfinance institutes for their businesses and to run their homes, et cetera, just to keep the cycle running. And we saw DFS come and kind of help them in that regard. And then there's the, all the different services that come with it, like BNPL, buy now, pay later. Yeah. So you want something really, it's your children's uniform, let's suppose, and you don't have the money for it, you can pay later. Of course, you'll pay more. But at that point, what's more important to them is being able to get it, or paying school fees, et cetera. So that changed. And then a lot of our labor goes outside the country to work, so the men. And they send the money back home. And that usually goes to a man's account because the women just don't have an account, right? And then getting that money from that second person becomes really hard for the women. So now the men can directly send the money through these Easy Pesa, Just Cash accounts to the women. So they get money directly to them. That is changing a lot of things, in society, in the way these women are living their lives. So a lot has changed. A lot needs to be changed. But as I said, I'm optimistic, and I know that change is never sudden, and sudden change is also not a good thing. In tech, you talk about fast-paced things, right? Human behavior, you work in comms, so, social and behavior change. You used a BlackBerry, and then the iPhone came, and you ditched the BlackBerry within months, and everyone was using an iPhone, right? But in behavior change, in terms of your culture, in terms of how you perceive money or the roles of different people, that takes decades. And we're very new to it. It's just been like the past 5 years. When did the Banking on Equality framework come? I think it was 2016. So it's just been 10 years. It's going to take, a lot has changed. I said the accounts went from 5% to 50%. But the change is there, and it's coming.
Yeah. And all of these initiatives regarding microfinances, they must be really helpful as well for women?
They are helpful, but they are very helpful, and I'm coming from a privileged point of view, saying anything to the contrary, where, look, microfinance institutes are needed. Women get access to that small amount of money that they need for whatever emergency they have, and then they pay it over time in small chunks. So in a study that we did, or some research work, we saw that women preferred longer tenor over less profit. What do you call it? Less profit that you pay to the bank or to the financial institute, like the markup that you pay. So if something was like, let's say, if they bought something for 50,000 rupees, they wanted someone that would let them pay it over 24 months than someone who made them pay it in 8 months, because then the chunk became bigger, the installment per month. They want a lower installment per month, even if the markup adds up to a lot more at the end of it. So microfinance institutions are great like that. But what you need to understand is that a lot of them are charging sinfully high profit rates. The markups are like 70% even in some cases, which is, as I said, sinfully high. So it's both ways. It's great because it solves a problem that these women in low-income segments face, but at the same time, it can be exploitative.
So, Abhi, what I'll do is that I haven't tested this thing pehle.
Okay.
So this is the first time.
Okay.
I'll hand over you these cards.
Okay.
They have numbers on each one of them.
Yeah.
And you have to tell us what comes to your mind when you see this number.
Okay.
So here you go. Just read out what these stats and tell us what comes to your mind when you read them.
So yeah, 50% versus 81%. This is GSMA numbers for mobile phone ownership amongst women versus men. And this just shows that a lot of women, half of your female population, which is half of the country's population, is without a mobile phone, never mind a smartphone. She doesn't have access to connectivity. She can't talk to, her loved ones. She cannot accept digital payments. She cannot pay utility bills through it. She cannot access any kind of information. For example, her child gets sick and we all start looking up symptoms or just help centers. What do I do? That information is not available to her and she's losing out on it. Jobs too. So if she's looking for work, even if it's domestic work and you're working at some baji's house, a lot of time these domestic workers, they have their networks where they tell you over phone, okay, so-and-so baji in 82D needs someone to come and help. She'll miss out on those messages because she wouldn't have a phone to help her. Then 66.7 million. This is the staggering number of women engaged in unpaid care and domestic work in Pakistan. This is unpaid, of course, very sad situation here. I don't know why men think that they don't need to care for their elderly parents, why it always falls to the women. But I hope that things change. I see wonderful men around me and I'll give it to them. I'm very privileged. I see great men, great fathers, great husbands, great sons who do everything, that any person should be doing, not just depending on a female in the household to do it. But yeah, for the vast majority, this is the reality. So year 2030, so we love talking about AI. Everyone talks about AI. I hate the word AI at this point. I just don't like it. The future is female, it's believed. About time, I think the past was also female, but we didn't make it. So 2030 hopefully is the year. And AI, I don't like because now, as I was telling a colleague yesterday, I can't even write an email thanking someone. I say, can you write me an email thanking so-and-so for XYZ?
Yeah.
Because we've become so dependent on it and become lazy. I'm not using my own brain, my own vocabulary, my own grammatical skills, my own language skills. I'm constantly asking AI. So I feel that even when I'm speaking to you right now, I feel that my spoken language skills aren't what they used to be because now I'm constantly on AI. But yeah, that's the future.
And so what this means to the freelance work that you started doing 10 years ago?
Oh, it's a lot more complex. I don't even feel like I'm the right person to be talking about it. Back when I was working, we were doing SEO. So search engine optimization, hardly anyone talks about it anymore. That was like the big thing to do. Or content writing, again, for SEO purposes. And then Facebook came and everyone wanted, a Facebook page and someone to run that. And then that evolved into Instagram and then Twitter and then LinkedIn and all of that. And AI, now everyone wants AI. So, but I do see that a lot of the workforce is going to be replaced by AI. I'm not saying that it's not going to need human intervention because, AI is only as smart as you are. Prompt engineering is a whole new field, right? So I've seen people use AI in work and that report to me and I have to be like, please, you can't just send me what AI told you. You have to look at it yourself and, tweak it a little bit. But yeah, a lot of people will find themselves out of work if they do not upskill. So I'm not saying that because AI is coming, there are no more jobs. I'm saying the nature of those jobs is going to change. So you need to upskill yourself. Just like when the internet came, a lot of a lot of the, way that we used to work changed.
And at the policy level, what exactly would you want to change by 2030 to enable women to have, more enabling environment, to have more access to finance, to overcome a lot of challenges, structural challenges that you see in Pakistan today?
Honestly, the policies are all there. The policies all say the right thing. For example, the State Bank has the Banking on Equality framework. It has the WeFi framework. And everyone is talking about women and how every bank now has to have a female representative that women could come and talk to. Every bank has to have gender disaggregated data that they have to report on. Previously, like 10 years ago, they did not have a filter for gender. And now all the banks do. And this is a requirement. They are given like KPIs by the State Bank for women, for a number of women clients, and then not just clients, but the kind of services they use, the kind of products they've been using, and what they have done, the banks have done in terms of, facilitating them, making it easier for them. So a lot of work is being done on the policy side. I think the problem is more cultural rather than, something legal. So yeah, I don't see a problem with the policies really.
So it's more about like implementation at domestic level and beyond that.
It's awareness. So I spoke to the State Bank recently, and I was telling them just how amazing it is, the work that they are doing. But the problem is awareness. People, the women that they are doing everything for, don't know that they have these rights or they can use such products, and there were all these great things being done for them, and they admitted to it, that has been a problem or challenge that they have been trying to tackle for some time now. So yeah, we need more of the development sector, whatever is left of the development sector, and then the government also, if it wants to do something rather than policy, they need to go on television, radio, etc. TikTok is where most of our, the lower income segments are, that we need to reach out to and tell them about what they can do, that they can all open. And one of the things you keep hearing women complain about, how hard it is to open a bank account. It's not. You go on your brick phone, USSD, and you send a code and your level 0 account is opened. No problem, no documentation required. So someone needs to tell them that this can happen. And that someone, I don't know who that's going to be. Maybe it's the government.
If we have all of these women who are currently out of the workforce, if they're part of the overall economy, I think, like, I don't remember the exact figure as to how much loss the economy bears just because of not having sufficient women in the workforce. But that loss must be like huge, and if they're like included, if the system is more inclusive, that would help everyone.
Absolutely, yeah. There's no doubt about it, or no question. Of course, we have seen again and again that when women get empowered, like economically empowered, they have digital literacy, financial literacy, they become entrepreneurs, etc., and find support there, economies grow, and it affects the way the household income works and GDP increases. It also betters your development sector goals, also are achieved through these means if women become more empowered. So there's no doubt about it. And study after study has shown that when women they invest in their households and in their communities, men save for things. They'll buy a car, they'll, buy plot, a piece of land. Women will invest back into her household and in her community.
On the kids, on the overall well-being.
It's always
of the
like
family.
that. Yeah. Every year I get excited. Okay, I've got an appraisal coming up, and now I'm going to be rich, and my kid is going to go to an even better school. That never happens because taxes also raise proportionately. But but that's what we do. I've never thought about buying a car. I'm like, yeah, that's where we think differently. Yeah.
Before we conclude, I have a question that I was actually asked by one of our previous guests.
Okay.
In this case, it was Fasi.
Okay.
So what we do is that I asked them to write a question that can be asked to the next guest.
Oh,
and I didn't know that you were going to be. So what did you believe when you were 25 years old that you now know not to be true?
This can go either way. This can be a very serious answer, or it can be funny, or it can be both.
So we can start with the funny one.
The funny one is that, I used to think I was really dumb. No, I think I'm really, really dumb. No, I'm not. Just joking. No. So I used to think that I didn't know anything. I have been really hard on myself my whole life. But I think I do know some stuff.
Yeah.
And because I wouldn't be where I am if I believed everything 25-year-old told me. Because 25 was when at 23, I had my child and a nervous breakdown. 25, 26 was around the time I slowly started getting better. And that was the time when something on the inside changed. I knew I had to do something. What exactly that was, I didn't know, or how far I would make it. The most I could, aspire to was to become a school teacher. Not that I'm saying there's anything wrong with being a school teacher.
Yeah.
But with a master's in English literature, realistically, what were my chances, right? But yeah, 25-year-old me also thought that the world couldn't get any more fancier than Orkut. and that Skype was it. I fought WhatsApp like Viber. There was something Viber. Yeah. I fought Viber and WhatsApp like anything like Skype. It is, they're all going to get acquired by Skype, but that didn't happen. So yeah, those are the things.
Yeah. And the serious one?
I think that was serious as well. Part of that was very serious. So it's just that it's going to take time, but it's going to get better. At 25, having lost all faith in myself, not knowing what I wanted to do, thinking, this was it for me. I was going to live under the shadow of, being the woman who had depression, to being 47 actually, being 47 today and having worked with some of the top names in tech and in development sector, and finding the kind of success and love and acceptance that I have found. I never thought at 25 that that's going to happen. So to anyone who's watching and who is being as hard on themselves as I was, just know it's going to get better. We're going to get there.
Yeah. And I think it all started from that particular moment when you had sufficient time to just sit down and reflect and get bored.
I was so bored. I was bored out of my mind. That's why I was on a clunkety old Pentium 1 computer looking up, how do I make money? How do I work? How do I make myself useful? All different kinds of keywords, long tail keywords, that finally got me to a point where I was willing to sit till 3 a.m. just blindly applying on Odesk for $1, $2 tasks that would take me a whole hour, $2 for an hour, where some people in my family even said, we pay our cleaners more than that. What are you doing? But yeah, it all came because I had time to sit with myself and think and look around and research.
It's probably, I think, for me, the takeaway is it's okay to just take a pause, put your cell phone on the side and get bored. Absolutely. And then ideas would flourish.
Yes, let your brain do what it's meant to do. It's not meant to just consume all these short videos, short form content. It's made to think. It has that ability. Try it. Sit with it. You'll find things coming up that will just surprise you.
Maria, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pleasure having you over, and I hope to see you soon again.
Likewise. Thank you.